Good morning and welcome to Omaha, Nebraska, Sharon Seventh-day Adventist Church here on this beautiful Sabbath morning, August 13th, 2022. And good morning to our panelists as well. Elder Terry Henry, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Right. And Sister Latanya Ava Wiley, good morning, Sister Wiley.
Good morning.
Happy to have everyone here on this beautiful morning. We are in lesson Indestructible Hope. Our keynote principal contributor of the lesson, the crucible with Christ is our theme, lesson 7. And Sister Wiley, would you give us our opening prayer, please?
I can. Dear Father,
Your mic's not on.
go on.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dear Father, we are so blessed and grateful for this Sabbath. Thank you for being together to worship you, to learn one another, to support. Father, I invite the Holy Spirit here to dwell in our hearts, minds, bodies, and souls. Father, let us receive a message from the lesson today that we can apply to our lives in real and practical ways. I lift everyone up that's listening and watching the Sabbath School today, that they will listen to. Father, we love you so much. Thank you for giving us this hope. Our hope is your word. Thank you, Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
And hopefully we can get her mic turned up there in a minute.
Probably
Indestructible hope. Memory text is taken from Romans chapter 5, verse 5. Now hope, let's read this. What does it say? Now hope does not disappoint because the love of God has poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who was given to us. Indestructible hope. Now this is in Paradise, California. Back in 2018, there was a major fire that took place, and it was horrible. It was the deadliest and most destructive fire in California history. It resulted in 85 fatalities. This is back in 2018. And scores of homes and properties were destroyed. This is a picture of the Seventh-day Adventist Medical Center there in Paradise, California, and it was destroyed by the fire. And the Paradise was destroyed by the fire. What took place there in Paradise, and all was because some careless camper threw a cigarette into some wooded brush, and that began the fire. And the people were devastated. It seemed like hope was gone. But God will make a way. And we could see the center was rebuilt. And matter of fact, this lady here, she was a nurse there, and she said, we lost our home, our church, our community. I lost my job at the hospital, as did so many other people. But I didn't lose my faith. That's the one thing I hung on to. Indestructible hope. Sister Wiley, what's the definition of hope?
When we think about hope, hope is a feeling of expectation for a certain thing to happen. And I like this back to the desire, confidence, and belief. So with indestructible, that means that our hope is not contingent upon the external situations. It is contingent upon a desire, a confidence, and things to happen. And our hope is Jesus Christ and his righteousness. All other ground is sinking sand. So that story that we watched about that fire, I know people personally, we all do, that have faced devastating situations and they still got smiles on their faces.
That's right.
They show up
Yes.
and they got all this tragedy going on. That's called indestructible hope.
Right. Well, some people, they can go through pain and tragedy and still have a smile on their face.
Yeah.
Some people, they're able to maintain a positive attitude when they're in a devastating position. They've had some horrible things happen to them. On the other hand, there are people who have not.
Right.
They get into despair and they worry because of a crucible. Now, just recently, we had a pandemic here in our country, in our society, on the planet, which devastated people. We've had social issues that have come out and caused people pain and suffering and so forth. Look to see what happened recently politically. But despite all these things, we have cultivating coping mechanisms. And I'm sure Sister Wiley is familiar with some of these coping mechanisms. Strength amid discouragement. We know that the Bible teaches about prophecy and about prophetic things that are going to take place. Some things are going to be beautiful. But in the book of Isaiah, this together. This is taken from Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. What does it say? So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. Isaiah 41:10. That's the Lord giving us encouragement and hope. Jeremiah, we studied about Jeremiah this week. And he was warning the people and telling them about what was coming. The Babylonians, he told them that it's prophetic that we are going to go into exile. And the Babylonians did come and exiled God's people. But even during that exile, the Israelites during that time, as well as this exile we're having in this planet, the God who encourages us is still with us. Let's read what Jeremiah 29:11 says. What did it say? For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you up an unexpected end. And we know Jesus will be with us through these crucibles. He doesn't. Henry.
Yes, I have a quick comment. So what we read in Isaiah where it said, do not fear, I am with you. So he is I'm to understand he is with me in the midst of the storm. Case in point, when the disciples were in the boat.
Yep.
And so is it wrong for me to think that if he is with me, if Deborah showed me a video on her phone last week, and a father and a daughter was walking past a fence, and the dog was able to get under the fence and came after them.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what happened. The man jumped on top of the car and left his daughter to fend with the dog. Now, so am I to think he's going to keep bad things from happening?
Well, briefly here, Pastor Drummond had mentioned that sometimes the Lord will save you through a crucible, and sometimes he allows you to go through it. It's above my pay grade to understand why that's the way it is, but that's simply the way it is. But we do know, but yes, Sister Wiley.
So that question that you answered, we'll talk about it's discussed. The reason why we haven't gotten discipline.
Right.
It is really about discipline and how those of us that have children, we discipline them. Our mother used to say, hard head make a soft sit down.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that's what Hebrews is talking about, that just as a parent lovingly disciplines their children, God lovingly disciplines us. Thank God that he does.
Well, the word discipline is a derivative of disciple. Education, teaching.
Wow.
Discipline
Right.
does not necessarily mean punishment.
Right.
Discipline
Yes.
is education, and we're going to get on that more on Thursday's lesson.
Right.
Jesus said this in John 16:33. What does he said there? Jesus told the disciples, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." All right.
What is John saying then? In this world, you're going to
have some
crazy
issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this life.
It's innocent.
Again, Pastor Drummond had mentioned he's on Granite Bay 7. We're going to have pain. We're going to have misery. Whether you're in the church, whether you're with Christ, or you're out of the church without Christ, everybody is going to suffer, going to have some pain. So why not be with the Lord and go through this? As we see, we're going in Indestructible Hope, and we're going to run through each day. Sunday's entitled what? The Big Picture. Monday, who our Father is. Everybody has a father. A number of people say, oh, I never knew my father. You have a spiritual father who loves you.
Okay.
Tuesday, our Father's presence. He is in our life. Wednesday, our Father's what? Plans for us. I don't know about you. That makes me feel good. Thursday, our Father's discipline, which you had mentioned, Sister Ava. We're going to get into that. And Friday, there was some excellent reading from the Ministry of Healing and pictures of prophets. Brother Henry.
Okay, so as I explore the question that I raised earlier, and I thank you for the answer. So when Jesus was in the boat with the disciples, and it appeared that they were going to be drowned. Mm-hmm. So he did not keep the storm from happening,
Right.
nor did he keep them from experiencing anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So how if we pray for it, if cousin called me this morning, Sheila Betty Rogers, and he does not keep us at times from experiencing. So is it up to us to focus on the peace? Because the disciples said, "Cares not that we perish." So help me understand what the mind is going through.
Well, we'll see what the Bible says about it.
Okay.
When we're hurting, it's very easy to presume that what happens to us is the only thing that matters.
Yes.
But there is a slightly larger picture than just me.
Yeah.
So,
And this is the big picture. Yes, Sister Wiley.
Brother Williams, so what we've talked about this over the past few weeks. I think it's very important that we recognize that our thoughts come from this part. Our thoughts are so fickle and can be so about cognitive distortions.
Mm-hmm.
People go through the same situation and have a different perception about it. Our personality and our character. And then we'll have a feeling. Mm-hmm. And we as individuals must stop judging our feelings. Mm. The lesson has talked about not making decisions based upon how you feel. How many of you have made decisions based upon your feeling?
Oh, yeah.
Without thinking about the consequences or the outcome? I have. That's something that I kind of work with people on, and it's very humbling because I got the me too. Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of person, I'm not going to share something with you that I don't experience or I haven't experienced myself. That's where that genuineness and that being authentic comes in, because that's very important. God gave us feelings for a reason, to tell us there's something going on, but we should not make decisions exclusively based on how we feel.
Okay, so things happen so rapid. I mean, when you just living, one of the famous things Cut said that resonates in my mind.
Now, who's Cut?
Brother Cut.
Brother Cut, this is a member who is deceased now.
Right.
Okay.
And I was teasing about being old once, and he said, keep living, you're coming this way. And so things are happening so fast. So take the situation with the disciples in the boat. Mm-hmm. So life does not slow down so I can adjust to each situation. Uh-huh. And so when I respond with my emotions, it's a force of habit. Mm-hmm. So if there's somebody cutting you off in traffic, you right away you get angry because you're violating my space. You
can get angry, mm-hmm. And so this is the deal: changing your thoughts. Okay. I'm gonna share some with you. Maybe you guys didn't know, but we're not responsible for every thought that comes to our mind. As we're sitting here right now in Sabbath School, we have different thoughts.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And some people that have mental illness have they cycle, rapid thoughts, they manic and all that. Mm-hmm. We're responsible for the thought that we focus on. That's why the Bible says what? By the renewing of our mind.
Yes.
Well, we understand that sin is the problem on this planet. Yeah. A lot of folks are more comfortable with sin than they are with God. But we understand where that originated from. That came from Revelation chapter 12, verse 7.
Okay.
And let's read this together. What does it say? And
There
there was war in heaven.
heaven.
Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. Now, on Sunday's lesson is dealing with Habakkuk.
Yeah, that's
Habakkuk. And in chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, what did Habakkuk face?
chaos.
We're going to look and see.
Yeah.
Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 1 through 4.
How do you pronounce that?
Habakkuk.
Habakkuk's
Yeah.
what?
Habakkuk, okay.
Verse 1.
Okay.
The burden which the prophet Habakkuk saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry, and you will not hear? Even cry out to you, violence, and you will not save.
Whew.
Why do you show me iniquity and cause me to see trouble? For plundering and violence are before me. There is strife and contention arises. Now, he was talking about the Babylonians. It was prophesied that they were coming to take Judah. Therefore, the law is powerless, and justice never goes forth, for the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore, perverse judgment proceeds. Now, you might expect that God would say something like, that's really terrible, Habakkuk. Let me come and help you immediately. But God's answer is the opposite. He tells Habakkuk that it's going to do what? Get worse.
So was Habakkuk, was he in his feelings?
I don't.
Was he in his feelings? So
Yeah.
the question is that a sin to be in your feelings and to be questioning God? No. God expects us, because in his word he said, come, let us reason together.
That's right.
Habakkuk he had a relationship with God to where, what's going on? Now you see all this, and that's just keeping it real, so it's okay.
That's right.
It is okay.
It's okay. You know, some people say, well, now, the Bible said it. I believe it. Case closed. There were two individuals who questioned God in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And both of these individuals were considered friends. Matter of fact, the Bible called them, these two men are friends of God.
That's right.
One was Abraham, and the other was Moses. And of course, Job questioned him, and
yeah.
Lord dealt with them, those questions. Yeah, Brother Henry.
So my question is, when they question God, it's because they're questioning someone that they assume should be able to control the extenuating situation or circumstances.
You know what? That could be. I like to think of that. This thought just came to me, just this lesson. When it says to exercise self-control, you're a fit person, you exercise, right? That means you participate. So when we question God and we're asking questions, we are exercising our faith to strengthen it. And that's how we do it. We have to engage, because being a Christian, having a relationship with God is participatory. Okay, we can't be spectators. You got to get in the game.
Okay. But what I'm basing it on is God is supposed to be able to control the situation. And when we think the thing that we fear still happens, case in point, when they found Jesus, when Lazarus has died, he said, he was speaking to the disciples, I'm glad for your extent that you might believe. So my parents got sick, I prayed, they still passed. So I guess with things happening so fast, we feel that it's out of control. Kevin mentioned that it's a big picture. Same way with Job, his family died. So it's not that God can't control, but given the big picture, there's a reason why he permits certain things to take place.
Okay, we have a comment in the audience, brothers, and make sure your microphone's on. You might want to push the button, the light, till the light comes on, and hold the mic close.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I would like to say something about Habakkuk. That name mean welcoming person. That's the name mean. Any prophets, they look like lawyers. They are under trial through the community. God tells them that to tell the community the community would not understand what they talk about. From Moses, from Abraham to Moses, any prophet they have complaining to God. That means they represented the kids to God. When the kids come, when the word come from him to the community will not understand, will not accept that. Amen.
All righty. Thank you. Now we look and see what the Lord's response to Habakkuk in chapter 1, verses 5 through 11. And it states the following. Look among the nations and watch. Be utterly astounded, for I will work a work in your days, which you would not believe, though it were told you. Now, he's talking to Habakkuk, Brother Henry, and Sister Wiley. He's also talking to us, the Lord. For indeed, I am raising up the Chaldeans, a bitter and hasty nation, which marches through the breadth of the earth to possess dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity proceed from themselves. Their horses also are swifter than leopards and more fierce than evening wolves. Their chargers charge ahead. Their cavalry comes from afar. They fly as the eagle that hastens to eat. They all come for what? Violence. Their faces are set like the east wind. They gather captives like sand. They scoff at kings, and princes are scorned by them. They deride every stronghold, for they heap up earthen mounds and seize it. Then his mind changes and he transgresses. He commits offense, ascribing this power to his God. Now, the Assyrians came and destroyed the northern kingdom, absorbed them. And it was the Babylonians that came and took Judah captive and took him to exile for how many years? 70 years. Yep. How does God introduce to how does God introduction to the promised destruction of Habakkuk to Babylon in Habakkuk bring hope? Now, even though you had talked about the scenarios, Brother Henry and Sister Wiley, is there still hope if we have our faith and trust in God?
Yes.
100%. So here at Sharon, we've been having a last day events discussion with our pastor, and the beauty and that hope is that we know what's going to happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so this is where the hope is, that Habakkuk, he knows what's going to happen. So Elder Henry, you said something about being prepared, so we can respond in the situation. And guess what? I love this, and I don't own it. The pastor said it. The way we practice is the way we will play.
Well, let's see what the Bible says. Let's see what the Lord told Habakkuk about it in chapter 2, verses 2 and 3.
Right.
Then the Lord answered me and said, what did he say? Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. But at the end it will speak and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry.
Make it plain. Just keep it all the way 100. Keep it real.
Habakkuk was trapped between the great evil surrounding him and God's promise of worse to come. So even though we're going through this stuff, Sister Wiley, Brother Henry, it could get worse, but eventually the Lord's going to come back.
It's got to get better.
Even though we're surrounded with evil.
Yes.
Is precisely where we find ourselves in salvation's history. Great evils around us, but the Bible predicts that much worse is to come.
Right.
The big picture. Yes, make sure your mic is close.
I would say that because the Israelites, according to Isaiah 46 verse 10, say that I'm put from the beginning to the end. Because everything was given to us, everything was happened from Israelites. Israelite was having a manna. Today, God gave us bigger than manna.
That's right.
Spiritual power.
That's right.
Because where we are now, we are different way. Most people, they don't believe the truth. They don't follow the commandment. That's why we are under captivities.
Yeah. We're in an exile on this planet.
Why Jerusalem has been destroyed by 3 times? Why?
We'll find out.
Amen.
Okay. And we can see here in our comment, I'm not going to read this. Those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube, feel free to read that and discuss it. Sunday, the big picture. We're going to move on to Monday. And what's Monday entitled? who our Father is.
is.
Look, I knew my biological father, and I want to know my spiritual father.
Okay.
Bottom line. This gentleman here is Oswald Chambers, and in the lesson here, it talks about what Oswald wrote in his book entitled My Utmost for His Highest. And this is what he said. Have you been asking God what he is going to do? He will never tell you. God does not tell you what he's going to do. He reveals to you who he is.
And he never.
What does that mean? What's he talking about there?
And he never answers why questions. What I wanted to share is about who our Father is. There are a lot of individuals and it's people that have not had positive relationships with their fathers. And they have a hard time accepting God as a father because father denotes some traumatic experience, something like that. So those of us, and I grew up without having a real father, but I'm able to differentiate today the difference between that human flesh father and the God is in heaven.
Because we're talking about a healthy father.
A
We're
healthy
talking about
father, the God, yeah.
You know, they're saying that's one of the reasons why there's
Yeah.
so much trauma
Yeah.
and drama in our communities and this throughout the world because of the
Right.
lack of a healthy father in
That's
home.
right.
You know, Job talked about that too. I remember with Job, and he went through. We talked about Job a while back.
Yeah.
And you know what his wife said to him? Then his wife said unto him, what did she say?
Curse
Doth
God.
thou still retain thy integrity?
Right.
Curse God and die. What is the matter with you? The book of Job. Go ahead, Brother Henry. And Sister White, finish your point. If you want.
She was working on a thought. I'll wait.
No, I was just going to, when I wrote down what do you think Chambers means with this idea, it says through God's actions. In his character, we will know who he is. Because there's a difference between personality and character.
That's right.
Keep stressing that. Our character is our internal moral compass, and our characters are continuously growing. Our personalities are set by the time we're 5 or 6 years old. Our personalities are shaped really by our environment and social, Our character is continuously being refined and developed.
Right. That's right. And Job had a character which was incredible. He wasn't perfect,
Right.
but he had character. Yes, Brother Henry.
What I will say is because we're finite creatures, God's plan is bigger than my experience. And once, I think it was Elder Monk years ago, he said it's not all about what's happening here in Omaha. There's things happening around the world. And the way Dan Rather used to end, and that's the story. He said it's millions of stories. But because we are finite, often as humans, we don't take the time, or we don't have the time to see the big picture.
And to understand, and what you said about the world, some people have said, well, that's happening over in Ukraine. What does that have to do with us? It 100% has to do with us.
That's right.
Because there are people starving in Africa because they get their wheat and their food supply from the Ukraine because that's like the bread belt. This is like if somebody came and invaded the Midwest.
All right.
And it supplies all the food. It absolutely matters.
That's right. And as we're moving on, then suddenly in Job 38, God appears and speaks to Job. And what does he say in verse 32, chapter 38, verse 2? What does the Lord say? Who is this that darkened counsel by words without knowledge?
Wow.
After that last question, Job replies, looking at the Bible, what does he say? I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I had no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. Job's final response, Job 42, 1 through 6. What was God trying to tell Job? And we can scan through this real quick. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything, and no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You ask, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore, I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. Sure, we can ask the Lord questions, but we better be respectful and understand who he is. Brother Henry.
You know, this is not a part of the lesson, but it's just a thought that passed through my mind. Humanity had nothing to do with sin. This was between superpowers. And yet when the enemy came on the scene in the place of Adam and Eve, God went straight to the point. Because Lucifer had made an accusation that nobody could live in this under God's rule. It was too hard. But he said, have you considered my servant Job? Job did not know that he was being put on a pedestal to be under close observation. And so too often, God may be bragging on us and we're going through something. And therefore, in the crucible, it may get extremely hot because you have an enemy that cares not for God nor us. Even though in the beginning we had nothing to do with sin. You know, this was between two superpowers. And so from time to time, we will go through some things. And I guess that's why we can't, as Job, we can't question God, or we should not question God. What do you think?
Well, I think it's okay for us to, and God expects us to question him. But then once he checks us, we need to humble ourselves and say, like, I submit, I surrender. In the last paragraph on Mondays, this is deep. It's the last sentence. It says, but sometimes God highlights our ignorance so that we may realize that human hope can find security only in a being much greater than ourselves, being God dependent.
That's right. Who our Father is. As we're moving on to Tuesday, our Father's presence.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Isaiah 41 verse, doesn't it make you feel good that you have a spiritual father who loves you enough? You know, one of the guys that we're talking about, real quick, briefly, why did Jesus come here in the first place? Okay, what? To take me to heaven? What else?
To reveal.
The true character of who God
is,
was and who he is.
Yeah.
Bottom line, someone been lying about God's character. God is God always here? Always.
100%.
And it says here in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 13, let's read this together. What does it say? For I am the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you.
Yes.
I don't know about you, that makes me feel good. You recognize this gentleman here?
Yes.
That's Pastor Charles Brooks, a wonderful pastor. He passed away a few years ago. This is what he said, when God seems far away, who is the one who has moved?
Oh, well, but due to the extenuating circumstances, I've mentioned this time and time in Sabbath School when we used to be back there. The disciples said to Jesus, carest not that we perish. And he had left his mighty throne in glory to be in a boat with them. But because of the extenuating circumstances, I felt that you were far away. So you asked the question.
Yeah, he left
who has moved?
the beauty and wonders of heaven to come to this speck of dirt.
Who has moved?
Yes, Sister Wiley.
You know, one of the, and I've had people, just ask me this as recently as this week, and you had on the screen before about like coping skills to receive hope. One of the greatest avenues to hope is really, it is through our feelings. It can be. Listening to music and just recognizing God's presence. There's a song and it's called Already Here. Some of you may have, by Brian Courtney Wilson, and he said, I'm already here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm already here. And then and I love this lesson because it says when we're busy, it can be hard to remember that God is so close to us. But when we do remember he is Emmanuel, God is with us, it makes such a difference. When God's presence is with us, so are his purposes, his promises, and his transforming power. Some of you may not have had this experience, but some of us know what it's like to not have God's presence.
Now, and the lesson brought that out too with the Jews. God's presence seemed very far away to the Jews in exile. Yet through Isaiah, God assures them of what? Future deliverance. So whether it's during the time of the exile or even in our time, the Lord has given us a plan. He's going to deliver us. Brother Henry, I know. However, what was the actual return to Jerusalem? However, while the actual return to Jerusalem was still many years in the future, God wanted his people to know that he had not moved away from them and that there was every reason for what? Hope. All right, Brother Henry, what do you got?
You know, we know God has a sense of humor because he'll give us children that will act like us. But in this situation where they felt that God wasn't there, the disciples said what they said. My oldest made a statement years ago about nobody's helping her. And I had done everything under the sun for this child. It's when we get in our emotions that you mentioned earlier. And, you know, the children of Israel often were in their emotions. God was doing everything for them. And they still carried on as if.
Let's look and see what the Lord said. Let's see what the Bible says about this. In Isaiah chapter 41, verses 8 through 14, let's read this. But you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the descendants of who? Abraham, my friend. Now, remember we talked earlier about Abraham asked questions and God called him a friend. You whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest regions, and said to you, you are my servant, I have chosen you, and have not cast you away. Fear not, for I am what? With you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all those who were incensed against you shall be ashamed and disgraced. They shall be as nothing, and those who strive with you shall perish. You shall not seek them and find them. Those who contended with you, those who war against you, shall be as nothing, as a non-existent thing. Woo!
That is deep.
For I, the Lord your God, will hold your right hand, saying to you, fear not, I will help you. Fear not, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel, I will help you, saith the Lord, and your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. We have a comment in the audience.
Yes.
Do not fear, God is in control. Yes.
God gave us example of the military. Military without.
No, it's on. Just hold the mic a little closer.
Yeah. Military, they cannot send the troop without commander. They must have a commander in front of them.
Military must have a commander.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's an example of Israelites. It's an example of God's word. When the thing is messed up, God must raise the prophet to lead the community.
That's right.
Lead the people.
You know, Brother Kwan, you make a good point. The Lord has always used a prophet.
Amen.
Always a prophet. And we have a prophet with us in our denomination. Yes, Brother Henry.
I'll be real quick. You know, you mentioned who has moved, God or us. And often we fail to realize we're the ones that have moved away from God. But I thought about Saul and all the crazy things that he did. And God was still there until he had gone too far.
Right.
And, you know,
Cross the line.
he touched David. But think about it. When we're asking God, where have you been? Where are you at? It's got to be those times when we're running from him.
That's right.
Saul had moved away.
Now,
Well, when you say that,
yeah, go ahead, Sister Wiley. Go ahead.
Some have experienced this. When you have unrepentant sin in your life, and we can recognize it as sin, but a lot of times we just doing our own thing.
That's right.
And when you operating out of your flesh, you're not looking at it as a sin.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about God. But when you come to and you wake up, it's like, wow, God is so merciful and so gracious. And in the grace section, it talked about, and I did this assignment.
Okay.
Over those
let me read that grace section. It's on the screen.
It's
and this is
wonderful.
really more for the Facebook and YouTube audience, for you at home to think about and talk about among yourselves. Over the next few days, try and experiment. At every moment possible, try to remind yourself that the God of the universe is close enough to you to hold your hand and is personally promising you help. Keep a record of how this changes the way you live and be prepared to discuss it. Go ahead, Sister Wiley.
And I read that, and I did that. And then when I went to work later on, I was sharing that with one of my clients. And she's like, wow, that's deep. You know, when you're working with people and people are so hopeless, It is so empowering, and I'm so grateful to be able to give specific examples
Yes.
on how you can exercise your hope and your faith.
You know, Sister Wiley,
That's deep.
I'm glad you brought that up. And what we're going to start doing, for those of you that are watching and you appreciate the input of personal experience and so forth, I'm going to provide, the church is going to provide a phone number where, Sister Wiley, you don't mind if I say this, she has a Zoom number where you could call it, you can have a Zoom meeting with her, and I think she will work with you and bring out more insight on the lesson, which can affect you more on a personal level. Is that okay, Sister Wiley?
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to start doing that because people need to hear that personal side as opposed to just our biblical explanation and readings, because we serve a wonderful God. Amen.
Amen.
Wednesday, our Father's plans for us. Somebody has plans for you,
yes.
for
Oh,
me,
yes.
for us.
All of us, yes.
Now, everyone is looking for hope. Everybody, Brother Henry, Sister Wiley, audience, everybody's looking for something. But where is it found?
Wow. Well,
For some people, hope is found in a smile of a friend. You know, sometimes when somebody can smile at you, boy, it does make you feel kind of good, don't it?
yeah.
You know? For others, hope grows out of financial security.
Yeah.
You know? For others, hope grows out of financial insecurity and a stable marriage. Some people, they're not satisfied unless they're in a happy, stable marriage.
Elusive.
Now, in the book of Jeremiah, we understand that Jeremiah was an interesting gentleman. He was in the southern kingdom of Judah, and the Israelites had made, the people of Judah had made a promise to Babylon that they would subservient, that they would pay taxes. Well, they got to thinking, why should we do that? We're God's people. We don't have to follow what Babylon wants us to do. In the book of Jeremiah, he talks about, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. What had happened? They turned their back on Babylon, and the Lord allowed, we're talking about crucible,
Right.
the plan, he allowed the Babylonians to come in 3 times and take them captive and exile them back to Babylon. And here they are, worried, stressed out. What reasons for hope are given in Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 1 through 10? Go ahead, Brother Henry.
Yeah, before you
And
read
I think I'm going to show these verses instead of read them for the sake of time. Go ahead, Brother Henry.
before you read those, the 2 examples that the lesson gave, money and a stable marriage,
Split
we
screen.
live in a real world, and those examples are all around us. We can't help but look at those because the association brings on assimilation. And so the minute you get married, people say, oh, you're going to do this, that, and the other. You're going to have children. You're going to buy a big house. We also deal with a God that's a personal God, and he knows what we're ready for. So we can't be influenced by the external stimuli. We have to allow that one-on-one relationship with God because he knows what we can handle. Some of us can't handle finances.
You know, as we're looking here on the Bible, Jeremiah was telling the people, look, you're going into exile. That's like telling us today, spiritually, we are in exile. We're on this planet.
Right.
And what does the Lord tell him to do? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all who are carried away captive, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem to Babylon. What does he tell them to do? He said, build houses and dwell in them. Plant gardens and eat their fruit. Take wives and beget sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased there and not diminished. And seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive. And pray to the Lord for it, for in its peace you will have what? Peace. And thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you. That was the problem. There are spiritual leaders deceiving the people.
How about that?
Go ahead, Brother Henry. And then
So-
Sister Wiley.
Why did he allow them to be carried away?
Why did who?
God
Why did
allowed
God?
them to, yeah. It's mentioned right there. Why did he allow that?
Sister Wiley, did you have something to say?
I was going back to that verse at verse 7. That's what I was still
I'll go
on
back
before you
to
got
it.
to that one. Verse 7, and
Seek
seek
the peace
the
of the
peace
city.
of the city, where I've caused you to be carried away captive.
Yep.
What is God trying to do? What? That sounds like an oxymoron. I am captive, I'm enslaved, but you're asking me to have peace? 100%.
Right.
Because God is not going to give you more than you can bear. And 1 Corinthians says there's nothing, I'm paraphrasing, that has happened to us that he won't give you a way of escape.
That's right.
God's got us. He's got you. That part.
It says, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, nor listen to their dreams which you cannot cause to be dreamed. For they prophesy what? Falsely to you in my name. I have not sent them, says the Lord. For thus saith the Lord, after how many years? 70 years are completed at Babylon. I will visit you and perform my good work toward you and cause you to what? Return to this place.
So hold on. What would make someone... how would someone have the audacity to put themselves up as a prophet? Wrong, and you know you're wrong.
You know, Sister White,
That
it is
is
the
deep to
history of God's people experience biblically from the time of Eden. There has always been folk among us in leadership position who led the people astray. Now, I think it was last week, Brother Henry, you mentioned Korah. During the time of Moses in the wilderness, he was a head elder.
Yep.
And he led the people to worship Baal and to deceive, not to follow Moses. But we have hope. If you look in the lesson, it says in this passage that we just looked at, there are three important sources of hope worth highlighting. These are the three sources that the lesson brought out. First, read that in bold. What does it say? God tells his people that they should not give up hope because their situation is not the result or unpredictable evil. I'm going to read the bold. I want you all to read the next part. Now, this is Jeremiah 29:4. Let's read this. What does it say? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, all unto that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. We're going to skip those verses. I'll just show them on the screen. Second, I'm going to read this bold, and you read the last part. Why should we have hope? The lesson says, second, God tells his people that they should not give up hope.
Because he can work even within their present difficulties.
All right.
Yes.
Yep.
That's
and we can look
right.
at Jeremiah 29:7. Go ahead, Sister Wiley. If people, you have something to say, we're just looking at the verse there. Oh, okay, never mind.
And seek the peace of the city.
I mean, it's self-explanatory.
It is. You know, and the third reason why we should have hope. Why should we have hope? God tells us they should not give up hope because what? He's going to bring an end to their exile at a specific time. Now, when the children of Israel were in exile in Babylon, there was how many years? 70 years. When that 70 years was up, Cyrus and the Persians came in and rescued them.
Yes.
And is the Lord going to come back and rescue us? We're in spiritual, physical exile right now on this planet among sin. But is that time going to be limited? Is it going to come to an end?
Yep.
Yes, it is. God can bring peace to our past, purpose to our present, and hope to our future.
So with this 29:11, I don't know if anyone did that, but I did. And I read.
Oh, there it
this
is,
promise.
right there on the screen.
Right.
It's right. Go ahead and read
For
it.
I know the thoughts that I think towards you, Latanya,
There
saith
you go.
the Lord. Thoughts of peace, Latanya, and not of evil, Latanya, to give you, Latanya, an expected end. That's how you read the
That's
word.
right.
You got to be able to
That's right.
see
I'm glad you brought
yourself
that
in
out.
it. And that's not taken away from the word. That's making it relevant to you. That's right.
Matter of fact, let's keep doing that. Let's call your own name out. Then shall Patrick call upon me, and Henry shall go and pray unto the Lord, and Henry will hearken unto you.
Oh, no, God will hearken unto you, not me.
And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart. Will be found of you, saith the Lord. I just go ahead and read it the way it says there. And I will be found of you, saith the Lord, and I will turn away your captivity. And I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord, and I will bring you again into the place which I caused you to be carried away captive. Our Father's plans
God allows
for us. Yes.
He allows us to go through things in order, and he know we coming back.
I don't. Maybe somebody can relate to this. I don't care if I haven't done anything to someone, if they don't accept me or they don't love me or they don't like me. Hey, The Lord loves me.
That's
the
right.
Lord loves you. And it's okay to have self-esteem and feel good about
That's
yourself
right.
because Jesus thought we were worthy enough to come to this planet,
That's right.
live life and show us how to show the character of God, and he even died. He took on humanity for the rest of his existence.
Yeah.
The human
Yeah.
race will never go extinct because
And
he
with-
will always have that.
And
that
with your saying
visage.
that, and I tell folk, if you don't like me now, you should have seen me a few 24 hours ago. God has brought me back. I'm a new creation.
I like
You don't
this. I know
let
what you
people
mean.
keep you where they met you.
Yep.
And he brings us back.
Yes.
Because he loves me.
Now,
not
Sister
because we deserve it.
You had mentioned this about discipline. 'Cause
Yes.
We're running out of time, but we've got
Oh,
a few
yeah.
more minutes here.
This
We're
was
going to talk
awesome.
about discipline here.
This was good too. Yes.
In Hebrews 12, 5 through 13, what's the message to us here and how does it fit to with what we have been studying this quarter? Now, Sister Wiley and I were talking before we started about discipline. And we have a school teacher in the audience too. I don't know if she's going to say anything. She might know something a little bit about this. Discipline involves education.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
not necessarily punishment.
Right.
Okay, the disciples, the discipline, and so forth. And in the message in Hebrews 12, 5 through 13, let's read this. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as my son, as to sons. This is what he said. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. We're running out of time. For whom the Lord loves me, for whom the Lord loves, he what? Chastens. He scourges every son whom he receives. You know, every whooping I got, I earned it. I was never abused, but I got some whippings. Brother Henry, what were you going to say? We'll just show the screen. Yeah.
Who the Lord loves, he chastens. But Jesus had never did anything wrong, so it said it pleased God that he.
Wow.
It's kind of a controversy there because the things he learned obedience through the things he suffered, but that we don't have time to explain.
Yeah.
But he never did anything wrong,
No.
and yet he learned obedience through the things he suffered.
But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate,
Illegitimate.
and not
Illegitimate.
sons.
How
So,
about
if we
that?
claim to be the children of God, he's got a right to chastise.
So we have to experience spiritual and maybe even some physical pain in order to be seen as children of God.
I know, and nobody in their right mind likes pain.
Ooh,
Oh.
I know I don't.
Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? For they indeed for a few days chastened us as seemed best to them, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness.
Right.
Now, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful.
Yes.
Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen the hands which hang down and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your
I
feet,
love that
so that
part.
what is lame may not
Ooh,
be dislocated,
your
but
feeble
rather
knees,
be
I love
healed.
that part. I love that verse. I love that. And make a straight path. You know, I'm reading through the Bible again, and I was reading in Ecclesiastes this week, and I found that verse that said that God can make the crooked places straight. That blew me away. That he can make the crooked places straight. Not me, but he can.
That's right. And you know, in the book of Hebrews, it lists the people
Wonderful.
of faith. And so, as we're wrapping up here, Brother Henry and Sister Wiley, we're closing. Was there any question on Friday that about for 30 seconds you could answer there? I'll read it if you have whatever one you want.
I had number 5.
Number
I chose
5?
number
Okay,
5.
let me go to
All
number
of them were
5.
good. Did you like number 5 too?
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Well, you both could do number 5. That'd
No.
be great because we're out of time.
No,
Okay. Can I read this thing for you here? Go ahead and start reading it, Brother Henry. I'll show it on the screen.
No, did you have a different one, Elder Henry?
If someone is willing, ask that person to recount a time that despair and trials caused him or her to lose hope and faith. What turned that person around? What can we share with one another that can help when we are in times of doubt and despair? I think that's a good question for both of you. We've got about 30 seconds.
I would say don't let go of the Lord's hands because, as I mentioned earlier, we're finite creatures. And so often we don't have the time to really see things through. But the example of Job is a good explanation.
Okay, thank you. Sister Wiley?
All this week, I have every day, I have an opportunity to share this with people, and I alluded to it in the lesson earlier. I give them concrete examples of how to do it. And guess what? When you're working with people, if they can't see the joy and hope and excitement in you, then how can you expect them to have it? You gotta like what you got in order to share it. So if you don't like what you have, how can you share that hope and enthusiasm with anyone else? If you cannot share with someone the hope that you have amidst difficulties and trials, how in the world do you expect them to grasp and take hold? I love this. This is absolutely wonderful, because I have been trials day after day. I was talking to my husband about that. We went on vacation, but Satan started in because we had so much fun. But you know what? Didn't miss a beat. Took that hit and kept it moving. Took that hit and kept it moving.
All right.
And then here I am today.
Let's give our panelists a hearty amen. Did a wonderful job, and our participation in the audience as well. Now we're going into our mission story. Our mission stories are taking place in the continent of South America. And there's two countries we're focusing on, is Bolivia and Brazil. You're going to hear a story out of Brazil. And the story is entitled Sabbath Ultimatum. This young man here, Diego, he has an interesting story. And at this time, Sister Arliss Blakey will share the story.
Diego was desperately poor, and his employer had given him an ultimatum: work on Sabbath or get fired. What could he do? Months earlier, when Diego had gotten married, he was so poor that he couldn't rent a house in his homeland of Brazil. So he and his bride moved in with an aunt who didn't charge any rent. At the time, Diego was working as an intern. Then he learned that his wife, Neora, was pregnant, and he began to look for a better paying job. His real dream, however, was to own his own business. Diego spoke to God about his dream. Dear God, he prayed, please help me find a job where I can earn enough money to fulfill my dream of having my own